About 7 years ago, I got an invitation to attend my cousin's dinner party. I have never seen my cousin before and only spoke to him on the phone. I was surprised that his family unexpectedly invited me after all these years. The invitation had an uncharted address that the GPS was unfamiliar with. I used a map and pinned its location. As I'm driving, I tend to notice how far I've ventured off from civilization. Trees after trees, farms after farms. Where the fuck am I going? I finally found a similar address that might be it. Approaching the house, I notice how dull and dreary it looks. It's completely engulfed with leaves and branches. This can't be it, I said to myself. As soon as I entered the rocky driveway, my aunt and uncle came out to greet me. They seemed excited and welcoming. Walking into the house, I asked where my cousin is. Answering immediately, he went to run a few errands. He should be back later. We spent the whole couple of hours talking about my mother and family. My aunt made delicious homemade pot roast that I finished off in minutes. After dinner, we played an enduring game of Uno. It was surprisingly fun and competitive. When we finished Uno, it was almost dark and still no sign of my cousin. Regardless, I had to leave. It was almost dark and I would have trouble getting out of this dreadful place. My GPS was ineffective, so I asked my aunt and uncle the most efficient way onto the highway. They gave me a puzzled look. I thought you were staying the night? I told them I couldn't because I had work tomorrow and couldn't afford to miss another day. It's much better if you leave tomorrow morning. Trust me, you'll get lost. I shrugged it off and told them not to worry. I'm an adept navigator. I could get out the Sahara Desert. Looking aggravated, they strongly advised me to stay the night for my own sake. At this point, I was getting pissed and irritable. I sighed. Fine, I'll stay the night, but I have to get up early for work. Both of them seemed strangely ecstatic that I was staying the night. As soon as they went to go get my bed sheets and pillows, I ran out the door and got in my car. I hastily pulled up the driveway. It took me a while, but I found my way out that depressing place. I got home an hour later than expected. It was 11 and I didn't want to wake my parents up. Climbing my fence and entering the back door, I noticed the kitchen lights were on. As soon as I took my first step in the door, I see my mom sitting there looking impatient. "Where were you?" she asked. "I was at Aunt Deborah's. You knew this." "Then why did she call saying you never arrived?" "Till this day, I never knew who I visited." One school day, a boy named Tom was sitting in class and doing math. It was 6 more minutes until after school. As he was doing his homework, something caught his eye. His desk was next to the window, and he turned and looked to the grass outside. It looked like a picture. When school was over, he ran to the spot where he saw it. He ran fast so that no one else could grab it. When Tom arrived at the spot, he looked around to see if anyone else had seen it. It was a small picture frame buried in the grass. The picture inside was a family portrait of a mother, father, and their 2 children. They were smiling in the photo, but something about their eyes made Tom uneasy. He decided to take the picture home with him, and he carefully dug it out of the grass. As he walked home, he couldn't shake the feeling that the family in the picture was watching him. When he got home, he placed the picture on his dresser and went to bed. That night, Tom woke up to the sound of scratching. He looked around his room, but he couldn't find the source of the noise. He turned on his bedside lamp, and that's when he saw it. The family in the picture was now standing at the foot of his bed, their eyes fixated on him. Tom tried to scream, but he couldn't make a sound. The family started to move towards him, their smiles turning into twisted grins. He tried to run, but he was frozen in place. The family in the picture reached out and touched him, and that's when he woke up. Tom was relieved that it was just a nightmare, but when he looked over at his dresser, he saw that the picture frame was empty. He searched his room, but he couldn't find the picture or the family. He tried to forget about it and went back to sleep. The next night, Tom woke up to the same scratching noise. This time, he saw the family standing in the corner of his room. They were staring at him with their lifeless eyes. Tom tried to get out of bed, but he was paralyzed with fear. As the family moved closer, Tom noticed that they were becoming more and more distorted. Their faces were twisted into grotesque expressions, and their bodies were contorted in unnatural ways. They were no longer the happy family in the picture. Tom knew that he had to get rid of the picture, so he went to his garage and grabbed a hammer. He smashed the picture frame and threw it in the trash. He felt relieved that it was over and went back to bed. The next day, Tom woke up feeling better than he had in weeks. He got ready for school and left his house. As he was walking to school, he saw the family from the picture walking towards him. They were still distorted and twisted, but they were real. Tom tried to run, but the family followed him. They chased him through the streets, and no matter how far he ran, they were always right behind him. He knew that he couldn't outrun them forever. Tom collapsed in exhaustion, and the family surrounded him. They were inches away from his face, and that's when he woke up. He was back in his room, and the picture frame was on his dresser, unbroken. Tom knew that he had to destroy the picture for good. He took the picture frame outside and set it on fire. As the flames consumed the picture, Tom could feel the weight of the family's presence lift from his shoulders. From that day on, Tom never saw the family again. He went on with his life, but he always wondered what would have happened if he hadn't destroyed the picture. He learned a valuable lesson about the power of the unknown and the importance of listening to your instincts. He knew that the picture was not just an ordinary photograph, but a portal to something much darker. Years later, Tom became a paranormal investigator, using his experience with the haunted picture as inspiration. He went on to help others who were haunted by the unknown, and he never forgot the lesson that he learned as a young boy. The haunted picture was a reminder that not everything is as it seems, and that some things are better left alone. One night, when I was a teenager, my mom went out to visit her sister while my dad was working the night shift. After she left, I had the house to myself for a few hours. I did my usual teenage things of taking a long bubble bath, putting on my pajamas, listening to music on my stereo, and reading in my bedroom. I heard a strange sound at the window, some tapping and scratches, but as we had a few trees and bushes against the front of the house, I didn't pay much attention to it. Then it got louder, and I thought I saw light go across it. I got up to investigate, but as soon as I reached the window, the noises stopped. I peered out into the darkness, but I couldn't see anything. I shrugged it off and went back to my room. But the noises started again. This time, they were coming from a different window in the house. I was starting to get creeped out, but I told myself it was just my imagination. I closed my book and turned off my light, trying to fall asleep. That's when I heard it, footsteps. They were coming from outside the house. I sat up in bed and listened, trying to figure out where they were coming from. I heard them moving around the side of the house, and then they stopped at the window in my room. I could see the shadow of someone standing outside my window. My heart was pounding, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I tried to move, to scream, to do anything, but I was paralyzed with fear. The shadow started to move away, and I breathed a sigh of relief. But then it stopped again. I could hear breathing on the other side of the glass. And then, a face pressed up against the window, staring right at me. I screamed and jumped out of bed, running to the door to lock it. I heard the person outside, trying to open the window, but it wouldn't budge. I ran to the phone to call the police, but as I picked up the receiver, the line went dead. I was trapped, alone in the house with a stranger trying to break in. I ran to my closet, hoping to find something to defend myself with. I found an old baseball bat and held it tightly, waiting for the worst to happen. Suddenly, the noises stopped. I could hear the person moving away from the house. I waited a few minutes, then slowly made my way to the window. There was no one there. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my closet, too scared to move. When my dad came home in the morning, I told him what had happened. We called the police, but there was no sign of the person who had tried to break in. For weeks after that night, I couldn't sleep. Every little noise made me jump, and I was constantly on edge. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, waiting to strike again. Years later, I still have nightmares about that night. The sound of footsteps, the shadow at the window, and the feeling of being utterly helpless still haunt me. I don't know who the person was or why they targeted me, but I'll never forget the terror that I felt that night. And to this day, I always make sure to lock my windows and doors before I go to bed. You never know who might be watching, waiting to strike.